Hello cruel world, my name is Dr. Sohom Das. I'm a consultant forensic psychiatrist. I assess mentally disordered offenders for a living so that you don't have to. So today I'm going to talk about polygraph tests. I'm going to answer the question, are polygraph tests reliable? Can they be used as admissible evidence in court? What are the two main techniques and how do you beat a polygraph test? I educate whilst you inseminate. I educate whilst you vegetate. So polygraph tests are quite interesting. They're often used in fairly trashy talk shows, but are not actually that reliable. So things like Jerry Springer, Dr. Phil, or our UK equivalent, which would be Jeremy Kyle. His show finished in 2019. So it's kind of obvious to me that they're not that reliable, because if they were, then we'd just use them in every single court case. They're not expensive, so we would just ask every perpetrator if they were guilty. And we wouldn't need a legal justice system, wouldn't need courts, wouldn't need a jury, wouldn't need judges, so there'd be a massive hit to the wig industry.
Do you think that you would be a better girlfriend to 𝐘𝐨𝐲 than Mary is? You said yes.
Yes. Yes.
And the lie detector test determined you're telling the truth.
The truth? You thought you would be a better girl? I will be a better.
That you all have been home from the last show. Bradley, have you slept with another woman? You said no. The lie detector test determined you're telling the truth.
What? What y'all got? What?
And finally, did you lie on the last show when you said you wanted to be with Amber? You said no, and the lie detector test determined that was a lie.
I'm done with your ass. No.
So polygraphs are used in the US by some law enforcement agencies and for like security screening. And they're also used to a degree in some court cases in some countries, but not as admissible evidence. So just to strengthen other evidence, like Canada, Korea, and Mexico. Having said that, dear viewers, there are a few countries in the world where surprisingly, polygraph tests are used as admissible evidence. Dear viewers, can you guess at least one? Or if not, then two or three. I will tell you three of them later on in this episode. So, before I mentioned Jeremy Kyle, he's one of the Jeremys I hate. By the way, these are all the Jeremys I hate in order. Jeremy Hunt, Jeremy Clarkson, Jeremy Kyle. And there are only two Jeremys in the world that I love, who are Jeremy Lin and Jeremy Renner. Dear viewers, please let me know what you think about these people. Comment on them in the comment section below in the YouTube channel, please.
Against Montgomery Burns.
No. All right, maybe I did, but I didn't shoot him.
Checks out. Okay, sir, you're free to go.
Good, because I got a hot date tonight. Odd date. Dinner with Fred. Dinner alone. Watching TV alone. All right. I'm going to sit at home and ogle the ladies in the Victoria's Secret catalog. See his catalog. Now, would you unhook this already, please? I don't deserve this kind of shabby treatment.
So the next question is, are they reliable? I think the main problem with the polygraph test is that they're not accurate enough and they only measure anxiety as opposed to measuring people actually lying. So a polygraph will measure biological processes to determine whether the subject is experiencing physiological events, such as an increase in blood pressure, or an increase in heart rate, or a shrinking of the testicles. However, they have been used to convince the perpetrator that they're completely accurate. So they pressurize the perpetrator into confessing. So the perpetrator thinks that they have to tell the truth and admits to crimes. Although I suppose I've now ruined the possibility of anyone doing that against you, now that you know, dear viewers, you're welcome. And also apologies to any polygrapher test type people out there. Nevertheless, despite that, I'm still going to tell you in this episode about the two main methods and techniques. So the first one is the controlled question test. First of all, the detective asks relatively anodyne questions to you to get your baseline reaction of the polygraph. Next, they ask challenging questions about the crime. So for example, why do you have receipts from the hardware store for a hammer? Why did your neighbours see you cleaning the boot of your car last Thursday when you haven't cleaned your car for months? And why did you phone the victim 3 times the day before she was murdered? Next, they ask you another set of control questions about a previous, let's say, embarrassing transgression where you're actually expected to lie, such as the details when you, and I mean you, got a massage in Thailand with a happy ending and it turned out to be a ladyboy. Don't play dumb with me. You know exactly what I'm talking about, Speedy. So the theory is that if you're guilty, you'll react more to the challenging questions about the crime than the questions about your transgressions. And that's because to you, the consequences are far more serious. Because after all, incidents of what happened in Thailand, I mean, it's just chlamydia. You can get rid of that with a course of antibiotics. Or so I've heard. However, if you're innocent, then you're supposed to react more to the previous transgression questions about Thailand than you would do to the questions about the crime, because you have innocent explanations to those questions. However, you can probably tell just by the way I'm talking about it, it's not always reliable. Obviously, because different people have different levels of anxiety. In terms of validity, this test is good at picking up guilty people, but it's not that accurate for picking up innocent people. In other words, it picks up false negatives, just like the time you didn't think you had chlamydia when you came back from Thailand.
Now, if the last time you saw her was when she was laying in bed, when she was alive and kind of having makeup run down her face, obviously that wouldn't be, you wouldn't know where she is, right? Because obviously right now we can't find her.
No.
Does that make sense to you? Do all those questions make sense to you?
Yes.
So I get to see what your body looks like on the inside when I know you're telling a truth and I know you're telling a lie, and then I get to compare that to the relevant questions about the, if you physically caused Shanann's disappearance, are you lying about the last time you saw her, and if you know where she is now. And I get to compare those to those questions. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I felt like I don't know, this is, the heartbeat thing, that's the only thing that I thought it was measured off of.
No, so
Yeah.
you obviously are a really bad liar. Have people told you that before? Like the second you tell a lie, like they can tell like on your face that, because the second you lied to them, number 3, like I don't know if you heard me clicking, but I had to like turn down the sensitivity because you were starting to go off the page. So that is what I need to see as a polygrapher, because that tells me that you know it's wrong to tell a lie, and you're actually having a significant reaction when you lie. So that is awesome. So thank you for being a horrible liar. No, that's a good thing. That's a good thing. We don't want to be good liars. So thank you for being a horrible liar. And that just shows me that, you know, obviously on the test when we're asking, you know, significant stuff about your wife, if you're lying to that, it's going to be even 10 times more amplified.
So, dear viewers, let's get back to those countries where the polygraph evidence is admissible in court. Countries include Japan, India, and Indonesia. So, dear viewers, if you got one of those, buy yourself a cookie and you can bill me. If you got 2 of those correct, treat yourself to afternoon tea and you can bill me. And if you got all 3 of them correct, then you deserve to buy yourself a Tesla and bill Elon Musk. So back to the techniques. The second technique is called the concealed information test. So this is when the detectives ask questions that only a guilty person would know. So for example, was Professor Plum killed with a candlestick or with a lead pipe, or was he forced to watch one of Dr. Grande's videos? Oh no, he didn't. The theory is that an innocent person would react to these options with indifference because they don't know any better about the actual murder, whereas a guilty person would have more of a physiological arousal to the correct answer. So this is more accurate than the control question test, but it also has its flaws. For example, a guilty person might be guilty, but they might not necessarily know about the details that you're asking them about that you've picked up from the crime. This kind of test is only used in about 10% of FBI cases, and it detects about 80% of guilty people and 90% of innocent people. So, you know, to be fair, it is reasonably reliable. It's not unreliable, but it's certainly not beyond reasonable doubt, which is the criminal standard.
Are you lying about the last time you saw Shanann?
No.
Is your first name Christopher?
Yes.
Do you know where Shanann is now?
No.
Were you born in 1985?
Yes.
Did you physically cause Shanann's disappearance?
No.
Before we go any further, I would love to introduce you to this channel. You are watching A Psych for Sore Minds. My name is Dr. Sohom Das. I'm a consultant forensic psychiatrist. I assess mentally disordered offenders for a living so that you don't have to. This channel covers a whole range of true crime topics and mental illness. Sometimes I talk about individual diagnoses, sometimes I talk about true crime high profile cases, sometimes I talk about my own ex-patients, although I anonymize them, sometimes I interview ex-patients. What I'm trying to say is there's something for everybody on this channel. Please, I implore you to subscribe, because not only does it help me out immeasurably, but if you don't, I will actually tell people what happened in Thailand. Again, Speedy, I'm talking to you. Before I conclude, by telling you about the countermeasures that people can train, I will tell you how you can beat a polygraph. So you can intentionally try and have an aroused response, behave, by answering all questions like that, even anodyne questions. So that masks when you're actually feeling guilty. So for example, you could bite your tongue when you're answering questions, or you could flex your toes. Also, you could use psychological distraction techniques such as counting backwards in your head, even when you're answering simple questions, and this blurs out the truthfulness or otherwise of your answers. Right, I just really want to quickly tell you about my book. So it's going to be called In Two Minds. It'll be published by Sphere early next year, 2022. It's going to be a bit like this channel, but a bit more of a deep dive, a bit more autobiographical, just go into a lot more detail. You should go cop it. Okay, to conclude, what I would say is don't believe the hype. Polygraph tests are reliable a little bit, but they're not reliable enough to be used in the Western world as admissible evidence. They're only really used on trashy TV shows, and they can help guide investigations. They can trick guilty people into confessing. So finally, I just want to give you a piece of advice, dear viewers. Don't impregnate your wife's sister at their father's funeral. But if you really must, do not go on the Jeremy Kyle show. And if you do that, do not believe his bullshit about the polygraph machine, because it ain't true, fam. Okay, that's all I have to say. Spread the love, do me a favor, tell everybody about this channel. You know they deserve it. Stay euthymic and do not forget, I love you.